My name is Amelia Brooks. I'm 13 years old, and I live with my mother in a quiet little town in Oregon. Most people think I'm just a shy kid who's good at math. But no one knows that on the very day I was being honored at my first ever middle school graduation, my father vanished without a trace. My dad disappeared right before my graduation ceremony, taking $80,000 and leaving behind only one email: "Don't look for me. I did this to protect you." My mom Holly collapsed right there on the front steps after reading those words. The police said my father left peacefully, no signs of force, and the case was closed as a voluntary disappearance. But I didn't believe it. Not because I clung to some blind hope in a father figure, but because the numbers and details in the case didn't add up. A man who adored his daughter suddenly drains the entire college fund they spent 10 years building, and then disappears in silence with one vague warning. If you've ever felt like someone you love suddenly became a stranger, if you've ever been handed a truth the world accepts but your heart cannot leave a comment, hit like if you believe the truth often hides beneath the surface. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to follow the journey I, a 13-year-old girl, am about to take you on. Because what I discovered after that was far more terrifying than my father's message. The graduation took place under a clear blue sky, with the school band playing and applause echoing from the stands. I wore a light blue dress my mom had picked out 2 weeks earlier, buttoned collar neat, hair pinned up, walking across the stage as proud eyes followed my every step. But the one person I hoped to see in that crowd wasn't there. I scanned the space, from the left side of the stage all the way to the back of the auditorium. One seat in the family section was still empty. My father's seat. Dean Brooks, the man who took me to every parent-teacher conference, who once secretly filmed me giving my 5th grade speech, who still called me little professor, wasn't there. And no one in my family knew where he'd been since the night before. When the ceremony ended, I saw Mom standing beneath the maple trees, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen. Her eyes were red and swollen, tears streaming down her chin without her even wiping them away. I walked over, and she handed me the phone in silence. On the screen was a chillingly short email sent from Dad's account. "Don't look for me. I'm not a traitor. Trust me." Just one line. No greeting. No explanation. Not even a sorry. I read it 3 times. The words blurred not because of tears but because of rage. A knot in my chest, like watching a beautiful painting being torn apart, and the person ripping it was someone I once trusted most. Mom gripped my shoulders. "Sweetheart, I checked the savings account this morning. Every dollar from your college fund was withdrawn 2 days ago. Your dad did it." I said nothing. My heart felt like it was being crushed. 7 years of saving. 3 summers of part-time work. A scholarship that wouldn't cover everything, so my parents had started that fund just for me. And now, it was gone. Mom sank onto a stone bench, hands on her head. "I called the police. They said, if he left on his own and wasn't forced, it doesn't count as missing." I looked at her. Her dark brown hair was tangled from sleepless nights. Her eyes puffy and bruised from crying. I took her hand. "Mom, I think something's wrong. I don't believe he just left because he wanted to." She shook her head gently, forcing a sad smile. "Sweetheart, sometimes people change." But I didn't believe in sudden change. I believed in details. In evidence. And more than anything, I trusted my instincts. That afternoon when we got home, I sat in my room, with the lights off, opened my laptop, and logged into Dad's personal email. Strangely, he hadn't changed the password. It was the same one I'd helped him create last year. Amelia Rules 2023. Whatever emotions I was feeling, I couldn't forget that I was the one who taught him how to make stronger passwords. The inbox was full: emails from banks, financial reports, investment invites, and notifications from a nonprofit called Family First, a name I'd never heard before. I clicked the most recent one, dated 2 days ago. "Transfer complete. See you at Newton County Shelter. Be careful." I didn't know what they were hiding, but I immediately opened a new file and started taking notes. I used a VPN, masked my IP address, and dug into Dad's browser history. It seemed like he forgot to clear it. Phrases like "money transfer Belize," "open offshore account no ID," hide assets from family kept popping up again and again. I sat there, frozen in front of the screen. The evidence lined up like puzzle pieces waiting for a full picture I hadn't yet seen. The doorbell rang downstairs, making me jump. I ran down to see Mom holding a large pale yellow envelope. The mail carrier said it was sent express. No return address. She handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was a printed bank statement from a system I couldn't access. The $80,000 transaction was clearly listed, sent to Fund 97B FF Holding. Tucked in was a short handwritten note, the handwriting unmistakable. Trust no one. Look closely at everything. Everyone has a role to play. I don't have much time. I looked at Mom, but didn't show her the letter. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want to make her worry more. In that moment, I knew I had to go further than the police or even my mother could. I had to investigate. Every clue. Every line of code. Every email address. And if I had to, I would go all the way to the end of the truth, even if the person waiting there was the man I once called Dad. I returned to my room, sat in front of my laptop, and opened a file titled 97B Investigation. Then I started typing. Not to fix a broken family, but to find out, if Dad really did this to protect me, then what was threatening me? Who needed to be unmasked? And deep down, I knew I was about to enter a world no 13-year-old should ever have to know. The next day at school, my mind was far from the classroom. Math class passed like someone speaking a language I'd never learned. Every number on the whiteboard faded behind the questions racing through my head. When the lunch bell rang, I grabbed my tray and headed straight to the back of the library where a row of old computers sat mostly unused. There, I plugged in a USB loaded with IP masking tools and email tracing software. I'd used them before but never to find a missing family member. I logged into Dad's email through a private VPN. The short message was there, no attachments, no traceable metadata. But the IP address didn't match our home or any known location he usually used. After a few steps, the program displayed one line. Most recent login IP, Newton County Shelter, Springfield, Oregon. I stared at the line like it might speak the answer out loud. Newton County Shelter. It was a temporary shelter for the homeless, about a 30-minute drive from our town. I vaguely remembered seeing an article about it a few years ago, saying they received funding from large nonprofit grants to run community recovery programs. And I also remembered one other thing. My dad used to volunteer as an accountant for a nonprofit, though he never shared many details about the job. I jotted down the address, closed every application, unplugged the USB drive, and left the library just before the bell rang. That entire afternoon, only two words circled in my mind: shelter and family first. That night, once Mom was asleep, I went back to my room, turned my desk lamp to its dimmest setting, and opened the old drawer of Dad's desk. The walnut desk where he used to spend hours writing invoices, checking payroll, and sometimes even helping me revise college scholarship applications. I opened each drawer carefully. Dried out pens, old invoices, a few work notebooks. And then I found a packet of documents clipped inside a plain brown folder with no label. Inside was a detailed list of personal wire transfers. Almost all the transactions were small and spaced out regularly. $500, $1,200, sometimes $3,000. But they were all sent to the same place. FF 97B. Trust Holding Subdivision. At the bottom of the page there was a short handwritten line that sent a chill down my spine. Family First, Fund Number 97B, Code 312 Ghost. My eyes froze on the last two words, 312 Ghost. The way he wrote it looked like a secret reminder just for himself. I flipped the page over, nothing on the back, but there was a faint pressure mark, as if something had once been placed on top of the sheet. I held the paper up to the light and tilted it slightly. A faint rectangular impression appeared. It was the exact size of a bank card. Suddenly, I remembered his nightstand drawer used to have a small box of old bank cards. I quietly walked to my parents' bedroom and opened the drawer. It was still there. A tiny wooden box, but when I opened it, one card was missing. A dark gray card from an international bank I had never seen before. I sat on the floor of the bedroom, my back against the bed, the soft yellow light casting shadows on the ceiling. My mind spinning with questions I wasn't ready to answer. But I knew I couldn't just sit still. My dad didn't vanish by accident. He was hiding. And he was hiding something connected to family first. The next morning, I pretended to head to school as usual, but turned down a different street once I left the neighborhood. I caught an intercity bus to Springfield. As we approached the Newton County shelter, it started to rain. The scent of wet grass mixed with damp wood made my chest feel tight. I didn't know if it was the weather or the feeling that I was getting closer to something real. I stood in front of the old iron gate, looking through the window where a few men were having breakfast, cold bread and hot soup. A female staff member stepped out, her eyes cautious when she saw me standing in the rain. "Who are you looking for?" she asked. I gathered all my courage. "I'm Dean Brooks' daughter. He came here once, didn't he?" Her expression changed instantly, like a current had passed through her. She hesitated, then quickly said, "Come in. But don't tell anyone else you're here." I stepped inside, my heart pounding. She led me to a small room behind the kitchen. On the table was a thick folder. "He left this and disappeared one night. Didn't say a word, just told us, if someone named Amelia comes, give this to her." We didn't understand what was going on. But I guess it's time now. I stared at the folder in front of me. And I knew, I had just opened the door to something adults always try to keep children away from. But I wasn't a child anymore. It took me over a week to prepare for the infiltration, not in some dramatic action movie way, but in meticulously calculated steps down to the smallest detail. I needed a new name, a plausible volunteer profile, and a convincing story that wouldn't raise suspicion. And I needed a reason to get inside Family First's headquarters. I chose the name Mia Keller, said I was a high school student doing a community research project for a special school initiative. I applied to volunteer directly through their website, attaching a forged recommendation letter from a homeroom teacher which I wrote myself and formatted to look exactly like school email. Within 3 days, I got a response. "Hi Mia, thank you for your interest. You're invited for a volunteer interview this Wednesday morning. We look forward to meeting you at the main office, 5th floor, Morgan Plaza." Signed, Rachel Donovan, Director of Communications. That name made me stop and stare at the screen. Rachel Donovan. I didn't know why, but it gave me chills, like I had heard it before but couldn't place it. On Wednesday morning, I wore a simple white button-up shirt, khaki pants and tied my hair up neatly. I looked like any high school student attending a community service for extra credit event. I arrived at Morgan Plaza nearly 30 minutes early. The building was tall, cold, glass-covered, and so spotless it made you nervous to step in the wrong direction. I was led to a small conference room with frosted glass walls. The room was bright, lightly scented, and the files were arranged neatly in their compartments. A few moments later, the door opened. Rachel Donovan walked in with the calm confidence of a successful woman. She looked to be about 35, dark brown hair softly curled, sharp eyes, and a perfectly practiced smile. Her beige outfit fit flawlessly, and she wore a sleek silver watch on her wrist. She extended her hand. "Hi Mia. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Miss Donovan. Just call me Rachel." She sat across from me, holding a copy of my application. "You're interested in helping vulnerable communities?" "Yes, especially financial education programs for teenagers. I believe those kinds of programs can change a family's future." Rachel nodded, a look of approval flashing in her eyes. "You sound just like someone who used to work here." I looked up. "Who?" She paused for a beat, then said, "Dean Brooks. He was once an advisor on our Safe Future project. We had high hopes for him." I kept a straight face. "I think I've heard that name somewhere." Rachel gave a small smile. "Maybe. But he's no longer involved with the organization." I sat up straighter, meeting her gaze. "Why? Was there a problem?" Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped slightly. "He left a few weeks ago. Abruptly, without notice. Some documents he was handling went missing. We didn't pursue anything since he was technically an outside consultant. But it was unfortunate. So, is anything he worked on still here?" "I'd love to learn from some of the earlier research if possible." Rachel hesitated. I'm afraid not. Everything he was part of has been locked down. But if you're serious, I can place you with our legal support group. We're expanding our work on protecting financial rights for low-income families. I nodded, pretending to be excited. After our conversation, Rachel gave me a tour of the main office. The staff looked young, energetic, the environment seemingly positive, humanitarian banners, organized, charity event boards, and open meeting spaces filled with light. But the deeper we went, the more I noticed how tightly controlled everything was. Every office door had a fingerprint lock. The copy machines had personal passcodes. The internal server system was completely isolated from public internet access. Something wasn't right. Rachel only gave me a seat in the volunteer area, where a few college students were reviewing funding data. I sat down, opened the preset computer, and pretended to enter numbers. But with my other hand, I quietly launched a small program hidden inside a USB stick, a tool that could map out the internal data structure of the server if connected to the same network. I didn't expect to pull anything immediately, but if it kept running quietly in the background, I could gather what I needed in a few days. About 2 hours later, my heart skipped. A folder appeared. Archive 97B. I clicked it. Access denied. At the bottom corner of the screen, a message popped up. Restricted access, Rachel Donovan. I lifted my head and looked toward Rachel's office through the frosted glass. She was on the phone, twirling a silver pen between her fingers. I had no idea who she was speaking with. But I did know this. No one puts their name on a folder that heavily encrypted just to hold regular charity files. And more than that, I was certain Rachel wasn't telling the full truth about my father. If I wanted to understand what was really happening inside this organization, I needed to get into that folder. Even if it meant finding a way around, or facing Rachel directly. I woke at 2 a.m. to the shrill ring of my phone in the dark. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize, no area code I knew. My pulse quickened as I swiped to answer. Hello? My voice was low, still heavy with sleep. On the other end was silence. Then a man's voice came, deep, firm, and emotionless. Stop. You don't want to get involved in this. It's bigger than you think. I shot upright, back pressed against the wall, a cold sweat forming at my neck. Who is this? I forced my voice to stay steady. Better you don't know. But leave family first. Now. If you keep digging, the one who pays won't just be you. You're threatening me. My throat was so dry I could hardly swallow. Not a threat. A warning. The call ended before I could respond. I sat frozen in the dark, breathing fast. His words echoed in my head like a warning bell. But instead of backing me down, they sparked a sharp clarity. If someone was worried enough to call in the middle of the night just to tell me to stop, that meant I was on the right trail. I stood, opened the drawer of my father's old bookshelf in the corner. Hundreds of books still lined it, just as he left them, mostly finance, auditing, corporate reports. He had loved books like other men love old flames, dusting them off every Sunday evening. I ran my fingers across the spines until one caught my attention. Audit Trail Essentials, Internal Security Review. Boring title. But it was the only one with a spine slightly out of line. I pulled it. The book was heavy, pages yellowed with age. Flipping it open, I saw the center pages carved into a rectangle. Inside lay a slim silver USB stick. My hands shook as I picked it up. At my desk, I plugged it in. A single folder appeared. Ghost 312. Crypt. I tried to open it. The system demanded a password. I paused, then typed my birthday. Wrong. My parents' wedding anniversary. Wrong. Family First 97B. Still wrong. I leaned back, then remembered the notes my father had left in the Newton shelter file. The last line, 312 Ghost. I reversed it. Ghost 312. Accepted. I held my breath as the screen shifted, decrypting into smaller folders. I clicked each one. The first, transfer logs. Hundreds of spreadsheets appeared, columns labeled, sender, receiver, date, amount. Every transaction was coded, but I recognized familiar IP addresses. Some traced back to Family First. Others, overseas. One transfer caught my eye, from FF Trust 97B to an account in a bank in Belize. $2,450,000. Date, 2 weeks before my father disappeared. The second folder, org charts. It was a tiered structure unlike any nonprofit I had ever seen. At the top, a name I didn't know. A. Sterling. Below that were cells, independent clusters, each labeled by number, 97B, 94K, 88, Z. I saw Rachel Donovan's name under 97B. Role, Financial Channel Coordinator. The last folder, Accounts. Over 40 bank accounts spread across the U.S., Belize, Switzerland. Some in the organization's name, others under individuals, many I didn't know, but a few that froze me. Dean Brooks, Rachel Donovan, and one that made my stomach drop. Michael J. Carter. The full name of my town's police chief, the man who had shown up at our house 3 times the week my father vanished, pretending to check in. I pushed my chair back, blood running cold. I wasn't just chasing a missing person anymore. I was staring into a structured money laundering network, layered, organized, protected. I shut the screen, pulled the USB, and slid it back into the hollowed-out book. But this time I left the book out on the desk, pages open. On a notepad, I wrote my first line. They didn't just steal money. They used the charity to cover something worse. Beneath it, I added, Dad found the truth. Now, it's my turn. I didn't sleep that night. After combing through the files, my head pounded with pieces trying to fit into one whole picture. But what terrified me more than the millions of dollars or offshore accounts were the names. Names I knew. People I'd trusted. I reopened the final folder. It was titled simply, Local Nodes. Each line carried a name, a code, a role. Cover asset, channel agent, financial handler, with a short note. At the end. The first, Robert Jennings, Mayor, Node 88Z. Strategic Shield. The mayor of my town. The same man who gave a speech at my school last month about community financial transparency. Next line, Michael J. Carter, Police Chief, Node 94K, Enforcement Suppressor. The police chief. The man who once stood beside my mother at my cousin's wedding. The one who gave me candy every time I passed the station. Scrolling down, I froze. Linda R. Wexler, Principal. Node 97B. Institutional Gatekeeper. My school principal. The woman who once looked me straight in the eyes, laid her hand on my shoulder and said, Amelia, you're the pride of this year's class. The feeling inside me wasn't fear anymore. It was bitter, like the values I'd trusted were crumbling piece by piece. I looked back at the chart. Family First wasn't just a charity. It was a laundering network, built on the protection of local power. The mayor legalized the funding streams. The police chief ensured no investigation touched them. The principal funneled school budgets into community projects. And every piece ran through trusts like 97B, the very cell my father had worked in. I turned back to the notes my father had left inside the encrypted file. There was a section he had written in pencil, thin and shaky, as if he had scribbled it down in a rush. Rachel is not just a coordinator. She is the central link. Don't let anyone know you're digging. Trusting anyone is dangerous. I sat frozen in front of the screen in the dark, my whole body cold. The people I used to greet every morning, the ones I thought represented kindness, they were laundering money. Not just for themselves, but for a system much bigger, maybe at the state level or even beyond. My father. He had been inside it all along. He hadn't run away. He was working undercover. And I wasn't sure he was even alive. The next morning I went to school like usual. I walked into class, greeted the principal like I always did. She still smiled, still wished me a wonderful day, her eyes as warm as ever. But now I didn't see her as a leader guiding students. I saw her as one moving piece in a machine. I slowed down outside her office door and looked through the frosted glass. She was on the phone. I stayed far enough not to draw suspicion, but close enough to see her lips moving. I couldn't read every word, but I caught the shape of a phrase. Yes, she's still here. No unusual behavior yet. But I'm keeping an eye. I hurried away, my heart pounding. Maybe she was talking about me. Maybe not. But I no longer believed in coincidence. At recess, I sat in the library and opened my laptop again. I made a copy of all the USB data into a new folder, named it in Latin, Veritas Lux Mea, Truth is my light. I encrypted it using software I had written myself, then sent a copy to the anonymous email I had once created, ghostchess92@protonmail.com. That would be the key if anything happened to me. Just as I finished, my phone buzzed. A message popped up, with no sender. She's digging too deep. Stop her, or everything will collapse. I froze. That text had come not long after I'd left the principal's office. I shut my phone off, scanning the room. Only me and a boy reading with his head down at a desk. But I knew someone was watching. And I knew I wasn't just the straight A girl anymore. I was a target. But I wasn't going to back down. Because if my father had risked everything to expose this truth, I couldn't walk away halfway. Not when the very people I had once called heroes were poisoning the town I lived in. I pulled out my notebook and wrote one line: "No one is worth trusting. From now on, only trust the data." I knew I had to act with more caution. And I knew the next stage of this investigation wouldn't be about numbers or passwords anymore. It would be facing real people, looking them in the eye, but never letting them in. 3 days after I sent the anonymous copy of the data to the FBI from my GhostChess92 account, nothing happened. No reply, no confirmation of receipt. The account wasn't even locked, which made me feel more uneasy. Silence in my world was often more terrifying than a direct threat. I began to wonder if the data carried enough weight, or if they dismissed it as some prank from a kid. Until Thursday afternoon, during the midterm parent-teacher conference. My mom was covering an extra shift at the library, so the principal let me sit in the school library until the meeting ended. I sat in my usual corner, laptop in front of me, but my mind was far away. It was hard to think about homework when I knew the principal's name sat inside a money laundering diagram, and I was pretending to be a normal student in front of her every day. I had just plugged in my headphones when a strange man walked into the room. He was dressed simply: gray jacket, pale blue shirt, thin metal-framed glasses. Not striking, but not invisible either. He looked around, then walked toward me. "Hello," he said politely, with a slight smile. "Miss Wexler said I could sit here for a while. The parent conference is packed." I nodded, silent. He sat one seat away, pulled a hardcover book from his bag, but didn't open a single page. A minute passed. Then he spoke, his voice low but precise. "The keyboard you use has dust the color of pale green chalk. A type only found at the Newton County Shelter Library. Very few students ever go there." I froze. My fingers slid off the keys. "I don't think an 8th grader would wander there without a reason," he went on, still not looking at me. "And I think if someone sent us an email with financial evidence laid out in such detail, that person wouldn't be just anyone." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "Agent David Carter. Federal Bureau of Investigation." He looked straight at me, his eyes calm but unnervingly sharp. "And if I'm not mistaken, you're the one who sent the email." I didn't deny it. I just held his gaze. "Do you have a copy of the data with you?" he asked. "I didn't bring it," I replied. "But I've encrypted and split it across 3 different cloud storage systems, each locked with 3 separate codes. Only I know how to put them back together." His brow lifted slightly, clearly impressed. "How old are you?" 13. He nodded slowly. "All right, Amelia. Here's the thing, we don't have much time. And I can't approach you openly. You're digging deep into a network the federal government itself has been monitoring, but without inside proof, you're holding the final piece. But you're also close to real danger. Then why approach me at all?" I asked. "If you're worried about my safety, wouldn't it make sense to keep your distance? Because you need guidance for you want to keep going. And because you've come this far, I don't believe you're the kind of person who would stop just out of fear." I was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I want to keep going. But I don't want anyone hurt. My mom, she doesn't know a thing." "Then we start with basics. He opened the hardcover book, which wasn't a real book at all but held a small phone and a new SIM card wrapped in static-proof plastic. This phone is custom programmed, no real number, changes its MAC address each time it's powered on. The SIM isn't registered. Use this instead of your personal phone when you need to reach out. I took it, my hand still trembling slightly. Second, he continued, the computer you're using has already been flagged when you accessed Family First's internal system. They know someone got in, even if they haven't traced it to you. From now on, only use a clean machine, never on public internet. I nodded, memorizing every word. Third, his eyes grew serious. You need to define your next objective clearly. What is it you really want? I met his gaze. I need to know if my father is alive. And I want proof to clear him. Carter studied me for a long moment, then nodded. That answer might be harder than you think. But I'll help. As for the rest. He hesitated. Let me handle the riskier side. You keep being the star student everyone knows. I sighed. I'm not sure I'm still just a kid anymore. He gave a faint smile. I think otherwise. Only a kid would have that much courage without asking for a reward. He stood as if he'd only come to borrow a seat. Stay in touch through the signal we agreed on. And remember, don't trust anyone, even someone with a badge or a uniform. I nodded. Not even you. He paused, looked back. Not even me. Trust is the last thing you should hand out right now. Then he left. The door shut softly as if the round fofty conversation had never happened. I sat there a long while, staring at the small phone in my hand. From now on, I wasn't just gathering information anymore. I was part of the investigation. And I knew I would have to be smarter, more cautious, and tougher than any adult ever imagined a 13-year-old could be. That evening, I sat in front of the computer screen, silently tracking the stream of data from the software I had installed on Family First's internal system. A program so light that no one noticed, but powerful enough to send me every single change in the Archive 97B folder. On the screen flickered faint signals, proof that someone inside the organization was altering files. The file being accessed the most was an old record titled Phase 0, Internal Evaluation. I logged the access time, username, encrypted it, and sent the log to my hidden mailbox. Right then, the secure phone vibrated lightly. A short message appeared from an unidentified number. Go outside. Your mother just had an incident at the library. My stomach dropped. I didn't wait. I snapped a screenshot of the live data, shut down all software, hid the external hard drive inside my pillow, and bolted out of the room. My mind repeated one desperate thought. Don't let anything happen to Mom. When I arrived, the library was nearly dark. Only dim lights left and a security guard standing at the entrance with a watchful eye. I rushed in, calling out, Mom, are you here? A faint familiar voice came from behind the shelves. Amelia. I ran toward it, finding my mother Holly sitting on a wooden chair, clutching her right arm, her face pale and shaken. Mom, are you okay? Did someone hurt you? I nearly shouted. She nodded weakly, whispering, a man came in. Not a regular. He didn't borrow books, just stood there staring for a long time. Then he leaned close and whispered in my ear. My hands clenched. What did he say? Her eyes filled with dread. He said, tell your daughter to stop digging. If she doesn't, she won't have anyone left to come home to. My whole body froze. My heart pounded so hard that I couldn't hear anything but the pulse in my ears. Mom's hands were still trembling, even though she tried to hide it. I sat down beside her, holding her tightly. You're safe now, I said, though even I didn't believe the words. I'll handle this. I won't let them touch you. She studied me for a long moment. Amelia, what are you involved in? I stayed silent for a while before whispering. I'm trying to find Dad. She closed her eyes. No words. Just a single tear sliding down her cheek. That night I brought her home. For the first time since Dad disappeared, she slept in my room. I couldn't close my eyes. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing. That threat was no empty warning. They knew I was digging, and they would hurt my family if it meant stopping me. The next morning, I went to school as usual, but inside, a new plan had formed. I needed to know who Rachel Donovan really was, behind the polished smiles and inspirational speeches. I pulled up the video archives from Newton County's shelter, the place where I first discovered the USB. Using Agent Carter's recovery software, I could restore even files deleted months ago. I rewound to the night of the 12th of last month, the last time the system recorded Dean Brooks alive. The blurry footage showed my father in a thick coat, baseball cap on, carrying a gray canvas bag. He entered the shelter, looked around, then disappeared behind the finance shelves. 10 minutes later, he came back out, but the bag was gone. I slowed the video. As he walked past the camera the second time, he paused, glanced at it, and in that fleeting second, his lips moved. I froze the frame and ran lip-reading software. The result read, "Mia, you'll find it." I had to pause, catching my breath. Dad hadn't just left evidence. He left me a message. I pressed play again. 2 minutes after he left, another figure entered. Rachel Donovan. She slipped in through the side door, bypassing the desk. Black coat, hair tied up, gloves on. She didn't walk far inside. She simply lifted her phone, recorded the finance shelves for less than 10 seconds, then left. I zoomed in on her phone. I couldn't read the screen, but I recognized the interface. It was an encryption app almost identical to the one on the first USB. Rachel had been tracking my father, and maybe she was the one who ordered him to disappear. I plugged in headphones, replaying the camera audio. At first, silence. Then, after amplifying the background, I caught a faint beep, the same signal the encryption app made whenever it overwrote data. Rachel wasn't there for books. She was there to erase evidence. I sat motionless for a long while. I once thought Rachel was just Dad's old lover, a secret from his past. But now I knew. She wasn't a girlfriend. She was a handler. The one managing Dad's position within Family First. And when he started leaning toward the truth, she was the first to mark him for removal. I typed into my investigation journal, Rachel Donovan, not just a financial coordinator. She's the crisis handler. And my father was her first target. I checked the clock. 1 hour until the community finance volunteers meeting Rachel led at the Family First office. I knew she'd be there. I wasn't coming as a curious student. I was coming to look her in the eye. And ask the question I had carried too long. What did you do to my father? I arrived at the Family First office right on time, playing the role of the model high school volunteer. Outside, everything looked normal. White painted signs gleaming, posters of sustainable futures lined neatly, employees passing by greeting me warmly. No, one suspected I had already stepped into the underbelly of their organization. Rachel was already in the meeting room, confident as ever. Ivory turtleneck, hair tied tight, black leather notebook in hand. When I walked in, her eyes slid over me, neither warm nor cold, but enough to tell me she'd taken notice. "Hello, Mia," she said with a thin smile. "Ready for today's session?" "Yes, I've been looking forward to it all week," I answered, forcing calm. She turned toward the projector, launching into financial jargon. But I wasn't listening. My mind was waiting for the right moment. The session dragged nearly an hour. No one knew I was recording every word with a hidden device stitched inside my backpack strap. When it ended, I approached her table. She was packing her notes. "Miss Donovan, could I have a moment?" She glanced up, lips curving into a line. "What is it, Mia?" I met her eyes. "I found an old video in the shelter's archives. It shows my dad, Dean Brooks, dropping off a file bag." She froze briefly, then smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about. You were standing by the shelf, phone in hand. I have the original recording. With the background audio." Her smile flickered. "Barely noticeable, but enough." "Be careful with what you think you know, Mia," she murmured, lowering her voice. "Truth has layers. Not every layer is safe for you." I didn't reply. I turned away, watching her reflection in the glass wall behind me. She didn't follow. But I could feel it, the shift beneath her polished surface. I left the building, went home in silence. The house was too quiet. I opened my laptop, pulled the hidden USB from under my mattress, and plugged it in. Inside was a new file I had never seen before. File name, Dean Final, M4V. I opened it. The screen stayed black for 3 seconds. Then my father's gaunt face appeared. His eyes were ringed with exhaustion, his beard unshaven, but the look in his eyes was the same one I had seen every night before bed. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and urgent. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it back." I sat frozen, my breath uneven. "I didn't leave to betray your mother or you. I did it to stay alive and gather enough evidence. Family first. It isn't just a money laundering operation. It's a financial control network, with high-ranking officials involved, people you'd never suspect, like the principal, the police chief, local politicians. I was placed in Group 97B to collect data from the inside. But things spun out of control when they began to suspect me. Rachel isn't just an ordinary coordinator, she's the observer. She decides who lives and who disappears. I heard my heart pounding in my chest. I had to fake betrayal, fake running away. Only if they believed I was useless could I slip into the shadows. But if you're watching this, my time may already be up. Suddenly, the secure phone vibrated. A call from an unknown number. I hesitated, and before I could answer, the video continued. "You'll get a call. It'll be me. But only for 2 minutes. The signal is monitored. Listen carefully, trust yourself. And remember, don't trust anyone. Not even the man wearing the FBI badge." Before I could process his words, the phone rang again. I picked it up, my hand shaking. "Hello. Amelia, it's me. Listen carefully, there isn't much time." His voice was real. Rougher, deeper, but real. "Where are you?" I choked out. "Doesn't matter. You're being watched. They know you have the data. Don't give everything to Carter. He isn't who you think he is." I froze. "He's an FBI agent. He's helping me." No, he was an agent. But now no one knows whose side he's really on. I can't be sure. You have to protect yourself first. I stood, pulling the curtains aside. Darkness stretched across the street. No one in sight. Yet I felt an invisible stare on every move I made. How am I supposed to trust anyone now? I whispered. "Don't trust anyone. Only the data. Trust what you can see, what you can verify. If Carter helps you reach the internal archive, use it. But don't send anything through his channel. Create your own. Break it apart, encrypt it, and send it to the 3 addresses I set up." "What addresses?" I asked quickly. "In the navy blue notebook, bottom drawer of my old desk. Page 17. Dad, are you still alive?" A pause. "I can't promise. But if you keep going, then everything I sacrificed will have meant something." The signal began to break up. "Amelia, if you hear Carter mention Phase 0, know that. It is." The line went dead. I stared at the black phone screen, my chest tightening as if crushed. Right then, a knock at the door echoed through the silence. Before I could move, the door opened. Carter stood there, a folder in his hand. "Amelia," he said, calm and steady. "We've got a problem." I stood silent, my eyes locked on his face. My father's final warning echoed in my head like a curse. Don't trust anyone. Not even the man wearing the FBI badge. I didn't sleep that night. My father's voice clung to me like fever. Every word he said carried the weight of a hunted life. I had trusted Carter. At least at the beginning. But now, when he showed up right after the video ended, when my father himself warned me not to trust even an FBI badge, everything I believed began to crumble. I knew I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't rely on anyone, not even the agent who had helped me until now. I had to reach Family First's internal servers, where every transaction, message, and account was buried deep in encryption. I chose late Saturday afternoon, when the school was empty and the old school bus sat idle near the repair lot. A faded Bluebird with dead cameras. I had washed it before on field trips, so no one questioned me being there. I climbed aboard, shut the door, blocked the windows with cardboard. I opened my laptop, plugged in the tiny Wi-Fi transmitter I'd smuggled from the electronics lab, and linked it to a hidden booster antenna under the seats. That router was tuned to catch Family First's internal signal from afar, a loophole Carter and I had once discussed. But I was on my own. After some adjustments, I broke in. Not like walking through an open door, layer after layer of encryption, each crack fueled by the decoy passwords from my father's USB. Sweat dripped from my forehead, my hands trembling, until a main control panel blinked to life. I held my breath. A file named Transfer Schedule 2025. XLSX glowed in the corner. I opened it. Inside was a detailed transfer schedule. The sender, account code 312 Ghost. The recipient, a Belizean bank account under the name Kirkland Med Holdings. The number at the bottom, $2,100,000. Transfer time, 9 o'clock Monday morning. 2 days away. My chest tightened. I opened another folder, Partners, Verified. A list appeared. The mayor, the police chief, the hospital director, my school principal, and Rachel Donovan. Not media assistant, but chief coordinator, Operation Phase 0. I stared at the screen. Phase 0. The words my father had tried to say before the signal cut. I pulled out a hard drive, copying everything. Schedule, partners, internal, comms, transactions, logs. If I waited for Carter, none of this would remain in my hands. Then I found the message thread. R. Donovan, still no sign of the original USB. The girl doesn't know we're tracking her. C. Carter, I'll retrieve the device within 48 hours. Keep it quiet. C. Carter. No mistake. I felt like the ground split beneath me. I had told him everything, every suspicion, every find. And he had smiled, guiding me through encryption, all while plotting to erase it. I closed every window, cleared my tracks, pulled the Wi-Fi, packed my gear into a signal-blocking pouch. I stepped off the bus, my heart pounding like it would break free. But fear was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Back home, I locked every door, turned on every safeguard. I knew I couldn't keep the data alone. It had to spread fast and wide. If they caught me before it went public, nothing would matter. I opened my laptop, switched to my anonymous accounts, and contacted major outlets, ProPublica, The Intercept, New York Times, even BBC. Each email carried a portion of the data, labeled with dates, accounts, and verification tags. Then I turned to Reddit. Under the handle Maplewood Sleeper, I posted on our conspiracy or news or fraud watch. This is the money laundering map of a U.S. charity network involving politicians and law enforcement. I'm an insider. Proof will drop within 24 hours. Warning: data may be deleted quickly. I attached a summary PDF, listing names, dates, transactions, each with verification codes and a hidden reply address. Minutes later, Reddit caught fire. One top comment: I'm an investigative reporter at the Denver Post. Contact me. We can publish. Another: I live in Newton County. I know that principal. If you need verification on location or transaction history, I'll help. Every line felt like a wind pushing my sails further. I wasn't alone anymore. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Carter. Amelia. We need to talk. Right now. About the data you've found. I didn't respond. I powered it down, pulled the battery, and sealed it in a foil pouch. I looked out the window. Outside, the rain had just begun to fall. But inside me, a storm far greater was coming. I would not turn back. I sat on the cold steps in front of the house when a black SUV slid silently around the corner like a ghost. 3 a.m. No sirens. No flashing lights. But I knew who was inside. The real FBI had arrived. They appeared just after my post on Reddit reached more than 300,000 shares in only 8 hours. At the same time, 3 major newspapers simultaneously published the files I had sent: the money laundering network map, the list of participants, and copies of international banking transactions. The whole town of Maplewood erupted. That was when I received a call not from an unknown number but from the Federal Bureau of Investigation itself. A calm female voice, introducing herself as Special Agent Pamela Reed, requested to meet me immediately that night at the FBI field office. This time, I didn't go alone. Holly came with me. My mother held my hand tightly the entire way. Everything I have is on this drive, I told Agent Reed, placing the USB on the table. And I also have a name. She nodded. We've been watching Carter for a long time. but we never had solid evidence. Until you came along. 24 hours later, Carter was arrested in his private apartment while attempting to leave the city under a false identity. He didn't say a word as the cuffs locked around his wrists. But his eyes gone was the familiar calm. In its place was the empty gaze of a man who knew he had no escape left. Rachel was arrested 3 days later at an upscale restaurant in Santa Fe. Still the same sweet smile, the same soft voice as if she had never done anything wrong. But when the agents laid out the transaction codes and internal messages in front of her, Rachel only let out a small laugh. "Dean thought he was smarter than me too," she whispered. That was the last time I heard Dean's name spoken in her voice. But Dean was still alive. When I heard he had been found in a safe house in the Arizona desert, I couldn't hold back my tears. 6 months no one knew where he was. No trace. I had feared I would never again see the face of the man who pretended to betray us to infiltrate the organization, to protect people like me, my mother, and the thousands exploited under the name Family First. The first time I walked into his hospital room, I barely recognized him. Dean was gaunt, his hair brushing his shoulders, his skin gray as if he had just escaped the shadows of another world. But when I called, "Dad," he turned. And in his eyes, I saw something real flicker. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand. No explanations. No apologies. None needed. We just sat there. In silence. In a bond fractured, but never extinguished. News of the case spread across America. National papers devoted weeks to exposing the true nature of Family First, how the organization used the guise of financial protection to cover up massive money laundering and corruption. Senior officials in Maplewood's government came under investigation. The police chief resigned. The mayor was stripped of power. And me, through everything I had gathered in secret, became the youngest whistleblower to ever receive the Whistleblower of the Year award from the National Financial Ethics Alliance. The ceremony was held in Washington, D.C. I stood on stage, facing hundreds of people I had never met, yet who looked at me with gratitude. I wore a simple black dress, without my mother, who couldn't bear crowds. But I knew she was watching from home. "Amelia Brooks," the host announced. "For courage, for steadfastness against threats, and for bringing light to places once hidden in the shadows of power." I accepted the award. Then stepped down. No long speech. I had already spoken through action. Months later, I founded a project called Safe Fund, an online platform for teenagers and families vulnerable to financial manipulation. We taught kids how to spot fraud, how to check transactions, how to protect their accounts, and most importantly, how to ask the right questions at the right time. One cold Sunday morning, I went to the community center to lead the first workshop. Outside, the air stung with winter, snow drifting lightly over the old wooden roof. But inside, the classroom was packed with children listening intently as I explained data tokenization and virtual IP addresses as though they were fairy tales. After class, a boy came up to me. Brown hair, bright eyes, maybe 12. "Miss Amelia," he asked, "were you ever scared?" I bent down, looking into his eyes. "Of course," I said. "Many times." "Then why did you still do it?" I smiled. "Because if I didn't, the fear would be bigger than me. But if I dared to step forward, then even though I was still afraid, I would never be consumed by it." He nodded, then walked away, carrying the spark I knew would one day grow into the courage of a man. That night, I returned home. The living room was quiet. My mother, I had gone to bed early, the kitchen light still glowing faintly. I sat at my desk, opening a case file. On the cover were the words, "Dean Brooks, case file #74-1DFE. I turned the first page. A photo of my father, smiling at his first interview with the organization. I laid my hand on it, my vision blurring. And then, the question returned, my own voice echoing inside me. "Are you ready to forgive your father?" I looked out the window. Snow still fell silently, as if the world itself was listening for my heart's reply. I whispered softly, not for anyone else, but for myself. "I don't know yet. But I know I'm not afraid anymore. My story may have closed one chapter, but I believe what gives it meaning is when each of you listening now asks yourself, if one day You discovered the person you loved most had hidden a truth this enormous. Could you forgive them? Would you step back or move forward? I don't have the perfect answer. But maybe, sometimes, forgiveness isn't for someone else. It's for yourself to no longer be chained by anger, suspicion, or fear. And what about you? If it were you, could you forgive? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story, every answer is precious, and I want to hear yours. If you felt this journey touched something inside your heart, hit follow on this channel. There are many more stories ahead about imperfect families, hidden secrets, and the moments when we're forced to choose between holding on or letting go. Because sometimes, what makes us strong isn't never falling. It's daring to rise, and to keep writing the life that is our own.